Thank you all. First of all, I present myself. My name is Daniele Bozzolo. I'm currently the technical advisor of the Italian Association of Railway Suppliers. I'm also sharing with Lorenzo, we are co-chairing this working group for railways. And I'm also currently chair of the IEC TC9. IEC is the International Technical Committee. And the TC9 is the technical committee in charge of preparing standards for railways at the worldwide level. I first of all want just to thank Omar and Pierre for having given an introduction of the complexity. It actually just was the tip of the iceberg of the complexity of the railways and the issues that we are facing on cybersecurity particularly. Then I go on and I start with the presentation that is between us and the coffee. So the mission of the Railway ICTA, the Railway Working Group, I understand it was one of the first. We got the charter approved, it was March or April this year, so we are also brand new, but when we prepared the charter, we had several ideas in mind, and certainly the aim of this working group is to identify emerging ICT technologies that can be applied for the railways and in the railways, benefiting therefore all the railways environment. We recognize that the industry requirements in railways is quite complex and is also affected from some reluctancy to change the rules and processes and so on. I can tell you, just as we discussed before, the first computer-based interlocking in Italy was commissioned in 1999. We used to discuss in the 2012-2014 when I was in the research and development the use of LEDs for signals. And it has been a long debate for a million of reasons that you cannot even imagine, okay? So railways is an extremely interesting environment, but for certain things it's quite conservative. Of course, as last but not least in this page is that our plan is to look for financing and developing activities within our working group, and this is something that we are actively working and researching. So the targets, as I said, of the working group for railways are several. Certainly is research activities toward system solutions. And system solution, of course, technologies, emerging technologies, processes, and of course, last but not least, the standards. We are recognizing that there are several topics on which railways are focusing their recent investments. And we believe that in order to make sure that we find consensus on these works, we need to go for new and emerging technologies where no IP is already there, and particularly there are no competitions among companies, so we will be able to reach the most of the consensus and the most of cooperation in working with us. Railways are focused on digitalization. This is something that is extremely important. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution, as Pierre said this morning, but it's a very strong evolution, okay? So for this, we are working on punctuality and operation efficiency. ATO is the equipment on board that provides a lot of management on the movement of the train, but is not the last one to make a decision because this is not a vital equipment. And we have PHM, as we discussed this morning, and this prognostic and health management, and the Internet of Things, digital twins. And particularly important is the change that will happen soon. Soon is saying almost a decade actually, is the GSMR that will be replaced by the FRMCS. That is the Future Rail Mobility Communication System. Then we have security on telecoms for safe operation, FRMCS, again, cybersecurity on it, green transportation and energy efficiency, CapEx and OpEx reduction. Those are all topics upon which all the railways are focused and working on. Well, what do we do then? Well, we have evaluated all those topics and we have picked themes upon which we want to start working. The first one that I will try to just fill up. The first one is cybersecurity on FRMCS, on which we have already identified two champions. One is Martin and myself. We are already working on preparing a white paper. The first draft is almost there. And really the topics, these themes are not for ourselves, but aims are to be distributed and involve or support the small, medium enterprises, the small, medium industry out there that certainly will be benefiting from our outputs. Another theme that we have identified and upon which we are working is the FRMCS technology platform and system solution. On this, we already have identified the two champions. One is Davide Amato and the other is Paolo Volpato. And on this, we really want to identify what are the issues and what are the suggestions that we can provide to the small, medium enterprises for this huge change from GSMR to FRMCS in the future, considering that there are several thousands of kilometers of lines already equipped. I'm saying there's more than 120,000 kilometers of lines already equipped with GSMR that will have to swap to FRMCS in a few years. Then we have a third theme which is focused on applying artificial intelligence on railway operations. And on this, we have also identified champions like Pietro Cassara that we had before in the panel, and also Gian Osvaldo Fadin that is an expert in railways. So this is to say that the working group on railways has very clear ideas, and this is what we think, okay? Very clear ideas on what are our motivations and what are our goals for these three themes, upon which, again, as I said, the names have already been identified and operating in defining actually already working on some of the deliverables. Then we have other teams upon which we have ideas, but of course we are open for suggestions or new experts joining us and therefore adding new teams. For instance, another team that could be of interest, we'll be discussing about digital twins. There is already a standard, the IFC, I guess it's the version 4.2, for digital twins for the infrastructure based on BIM. But there is no digital twin defined for rolling stocks. And I believe that this should be something quite important for the railways. Then another one of the possible themes upon which we will be interested to work is the passengers multimodality, the possibility of supporting a traveler moving from A to B, being able to buy the tickets and being able to receive in real time any changes on his plan due for any delay or for any whatever possible. And particularly also the support of buying tickets that can be used on different transportation modes. And again, I close this saying this is the open themes in railways, is an open, is a white sheet of paper. Last page is what's next. Well, we believe that we are extending and broadening our working group, also identifying and looking for new champions and the future teams. This is certainly one of the topics, and in line with what I said before. Then we would like to get integrated with the horizontal working groups, as we have seen before, particularly, for instance, on the instances of cybersecurity, telecoms, and so on. We are talking about a project where we would like to get involved of applying new telecoms system architectures for trains running at over 500 kilometers per hour. We would like to focus our research on EU financed or national financed projects. Of course, looking for industry support, guidance and training, and also providing guidance and training for small and medium enterprises, going back to the FRMCS replacing GSMR as an example. And then we would like to identify future teams upon the ones that we have already organized the champions, and we already identified deliverables for them. I think that I'm done with my presentation, because this is a tandem presentation after Martin will be here. Martin has been working with us on the team number 1 for cybersecurity on FRMCS. And then after that, there will be Thomas making a presentation on the efforts and the aims of DB in terms of digitalization.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Thomas Weidhof. I'm from Deutsche Bahn. And my topic will be the challenge of the GSMR obsolescence for ETCS, because the change from GSMR to FRMCS means a lot also for the ETCS onboard units. And you heard before Pierre and Omar, they explained ERTMS, so everybody here knows exactly what ERTMS is, so I can change it or make it quite short. And then I have another topic. Jens is not in the room. I really like the open source topic, and I worked some time at OpenETCS. I don't know if you know it, but at least we have the source code of ETCS. It's an older system version, but we tried it to open, but industry doesn't like it. But it's not a free beer, it's really an open source code. But it's a complete different topic, so I come back to my topic. And I will tell you about the market demands, because Deutsche Bahn is between the industry and the customer, and I'm here because for me it's a complete new network, because to tell you the truth, I don't have the solution. I'm really searching for a solution, and in my normal network with the old industry, I can't find the network, and perhaps here is a little bit more enterprise or something innovative, so that we can find a solution or the right people who have good ideas. Okay, so let's start. Introduction Deutsche Bahn. Deutsche Bahn. Okay, it's under construction, not even not only the infrastructure is under construction, but from perhaps you don't know, from the October the 1st, Richard Lutz isn't anymore CEO of Deutsche Bahn. It's Evelyn Paller. They said we get a new CEO for DB Infracode, and they said, oh no, the new one is not the right one, so it's under construction. We have a new government, and they have an agenda for happy customers, and Patrick Schnieder made his strategy for happy customers. Patrick Schnieder, he's the transport minister of Germany. And it's not thick, but my topics were all in the agenda, so I think for me it was quite good, because it speaks about ETCS, it speaks about 5G, it speaks about FRMCS and digitalization. So I really hope that I get now a lot of money from the government to implement ETCS onboard units, because ETCS is of course infrastructure and vehicles, and you can only see it as one system, but my specialty is the onboard system. and interface to the infrastructure. Now you see the ETCS system. Yeah, the interface is about the air, it's data communication, and that's GSMR or FRMCS. Pierre said it has to be FRMCS, but for me it could also be public. You have to solve some security things, but I think it is possible. In other countries, you use public as for ETCS. So yeah, we need a solution for all areas, not only for the metropole regions like Munich, but also for areas where almost no people live, and then your own system. I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah, and then ERTMS is more. It's also in the future perhaps train integrity monitoring. It's about high automatization. We call it ATO, and yeah, that's the ETCS system. But I think it goes too far to explain everything. But that's my playing field. Okay, and now to come to the topic. For here, you have fields of innovation. You have a lot of fields of innovation, but one is high-speed data transmission and connectivity. So you see, connectivity and the transmission systems is really in the center for a successful digitalization of the railway system. And that are the challenges. Pierre told you before. Here we have in 2028. So Deutsche Bahn is part of a member of UIC, and I heard that UIC does what the members want to do. At least I learned it, so I can tell you what I want now. Pierre told me he will hear me after that. Yeah. On the left side, you see the specification work. Okay, it's here. And we have here the year 2028, and it said that the specification is ready in 2028, but perhaps in 2029. We don't know it, perhaps later. So, and then we have an industry that says, we start to develop new products after the specification is finished, but before it's a huge risk. So for GSMR that means 2 years, yes, but we have also to change the ETCS system and to develop a new ETCS system with the whole homologation process in Europe, it's at least 5 years. So we are in the year 2029, and then with 5 years of development, we have 1 year to equip 30,000 vehicles in Europe with new ETCS onboard units. Yeah, and that's not possible. So that's why the biggest railway companies in Europe go to the Commission and say that plan does not work, and we need a solution. And we need partners from the industry who helps us with the solution, because we have different signs. We say we need a fast homologation, then says the ERA, no, fast homologation is not possible, the rules are so difficult. Then we say, we want less requirements. Then the infrastructure managers say, no, each country has its own requirements, we want all requirements. And then we say, we want an adapter from ETCS to the communication system. That's not possible, it's also not possible. So at the moment, with every idea we bring, somebody tells us it's not possible. So at the moment, we are escalating it to the highest level. That's the good thing. If you work at a huge company, then you can escalate it quite high. And also with ÖBB, with SNCF, and also with SBB. But in Germany, we are quite lucky because we have almost no ETCS tracks. But in Austria and in Switzerland, they have to reinvest the money for the ETCS onboard unit a second time at least, and all because we changed the communication system. And that's why an intelligence architecture is so important. And we need partner who want an intelligent architecture, because the huge industries, it's also the same. Companies like Siemens or Alstom, they say, yeah, you get everything from me, but you don't get the interfaces. And then we come back to the tender and who has really the power, yeah? And yeah, at the moment the power is more on the industry side than on the customer side, because you have a liberated market, and in the regional traffic, it's who's the cheapest. It's not who's the best or has the highest quality. So that are the challenges for us, and especially for your topic, communication system, and is one of the key challenges for the digitalization of the railway sector, and that's why I'm really happy that you have these working groups who takes care about FRMCS and cybersecurity and these things, and why it's, I think, so important that you have DIA and you have the right topics. So thank you very much. Yeah, that was what I explained you with the specification timeline of FRMCS. That was in the last RISC meeting. RISC meeting is something on EU level, and then they say perhaps it's June 29, not 28. So that's and that's the introduction of the ETCS system versions. And here I put you. I know it's not a good presentation, but that are the number of vehicles who will get a problem. And we have from the huge, that's only for the huge countries. Yeah. And here are 26,000, and 20% are able to host the new system versions, but of course they have to be rehomologated, and the other 80% just need new hardware. And if you know that the cost for ERTMS is between 500,000 and 1 million per vehicle.
Wow.
Then you have to spend a lot of money again, and that's why the signaling engineers are not happy at the moment with the challenges at the moment. Yeah, and there we have to find a solution, and my question was before, what shall I put in the tender, because my job inside DB is, I was in the procurement department, but now I'm quite close to the Ministry of Public Transport, and I try to explain them how you get funding. And then you say, you get only funding if you use open source, or you get only public funding if you have transparent architecture, something like this, yeah? That's the idea, so that we at least in the future don't have this problem again, because we will have then system version 4 or 6G or something else, yeah? And I don't want to have the same problems in 20 years again. So I'm happy to be here and to learn a lot about that's the challenges, yeah. And thank you very much. That's the DB perspective.
Thank you. So I'm Martin Reed from the University of Essex in the UK, and Amar started off this morning giving a very good talk about cybersecurity. In it he said that there are no cybersecurity professors in railways, and I can say I'm definitely not one of those. I'm a cybersecurity professor, but I know very little about railways until I've had my friend Daniele really introduce me to it. So I've been learning very quickly, and looking at the cybersecurity issues in FRMCS, we'll see when we go through it. Actually, how long have I actually got? 'Cause you don't
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yes.
I'll stick with it. I'll make sure I stick with it. So as we said, GSMR is the current system. I talked to people in the UK about how they're running their systems, and they're way behind Europe, it seems. But GSMR is almost like a sort of walkie-talkie system they use when they get stuck in a train, it seems. So they're not using it in the UK for doing data transport for in-cab signalling at the moment. In fact, they've just got the first line in the UK that's got in-cab signalling. So in other words, you don't need the signals by the side of the track, it signals to the operator and the driver in the train. My understanding is that the VRMCS, the Future Radio Mobile Communication System, the version 3 will be the first one probably going into trials. I'm saying it's trials of this year, next year, for the early deployment 2029, we think, before it may start. So somewhere ahead. For those in the 5G space, it's roughly 17, 18 likely to be. So we've got all these standards. If you look at the 3GPP standards, there's loads of cybersecurity in there. So what are the issues? Well, they specify the system, but not how it interops with legacy. Think about the timelines. We talk about not wanting to replace the stuff. If it lasts as long as GSMR, now no one said how long FRMCS will last, but if it lasts as long as GSMR, I will be dead by the time it finishes. Most likely. So that's not so long away, maybe. The system's getting more complex, and if we think about cybersecurity and how it's evolved, let's just look at the sort of history of cybersecurity and how it maps onto railways. Well, of course, it started by systems that weren't interconnected. There was no security problem, so they thought, because there was an air gap there. Lots of railway systems are still using that today. It was only, I think, 2 years ago that they removed the lever that pulled the cable that moved the signal at one of the lines that I was still travelling on. Now, not the bit I did, but right at the end. So they really are moving away from, that really is about as far from the internet as you can get. Somebody's pulling a lever. So that, no security. Now, of course, with cybersecurity, the first thing that happened, of course, was just simply take a host you want to protect on the internet. What do? You just protect that host, and the rest of it doesn't matter because there's not too much attacking going on. That was very much the story in the 1980s. That's very rarely used today. Even railway systems not really using that. They're either using that or more systems where you've got some kind of perimeter defence. So cybersecurity then moving into maybe the 1990s, having a firewall at the edge. Of course, that's a good way to protect. That's not very commonly used today either. We're generally now using systems like this, and this is really where the architecture of railway systems are today, many organisations. But the problem with this, you've got lots of lateral movement inside those perimeters. And, we hear ransomware attacks. The problems are because on-premises architecture with that sort of thing. And the railways are very much going to be stuck in that kind of architecture if they're following the standards at the moment. So that's the architecture that's really there. What's happened since then is we've had identity-based management, okay? And we hear, when I talk to friends and colleagues who work in the railway industry, they say, oh yeah, we've got a username and a password. We use that for all of the systems on this line. So they don't have. That's not true to say. Many railway systems do have good identity management, but they also have systems where it is a username and a password which is shared among a system. And if you know anything about cybersecurity, we've very much moved away from that concept of having a username and password being good for anything, and moving more to more identity-based approaches. And that's where the systems are today. If we look at zero trust systems, everything is micro-segmented. Every single communication system has got TLS on it, all of those sort of things. So that's essentially a modern cloud infrastructure. That's where we should be doing all our cybersecurity. It should be that kind of architecture. And we're a long way from that, both in companies. We're getting there on cloud systems, but I know many on-premises architectures are not moving to that. And the railway systems are nowhere near that. If you look through the latest standard for cybersecurity for railways, it's not even mentioned, Zero Trust is not mentioned once. Now, of course, that's not to say it's a great standard. They're doing all of the right things in there, I'm sure, but they're not looking ahead to maybe where we need to go, beyond the systems today. Certainly, they're a long way to go. Many railway systems, of course, are still stuck in this kind of architecture, where they've got systems completely disconnected. So to go from there all the way through to some modern sort of cloud-based system is a long way to go. What about the FRMCS? So the FRMCS is a 5G mobile system, and it's purely for doing the signalling and for the voice communication on the infrastructure side. So people were saying, well, hang on, I can't get good, good Wi-Fi on the train. It's nothing to do with that. It's just purely on the signalling and critical infrastructure side mainly. Yes, it could maybe sliced in existing public architecture. Maybe you could take a 5G network and slice and use some of the FRMCS in that. It uses some of the mission critical services. Not heard much about that actually from the I'm sure maybe someone here has heard about it. It's part of the 3GP 5G standards, and it'll be essential for delivering these in-cab signalling systems. So they can remove the signalling at the side of the track, and they can have the railway systems literally, the driver can see the signalling in there, and they can move to what's called a moving block. In other words, at the moment you've got fixed blocks where it's safe to have a train. Potentially you have trains that just know the distance between the train in front of them, and they can automatically do that signalling. This FRMCS will be essential to that, and just think how critical that is. That is now an absolute critical infrastructure. It'll need to do cross-region, cross-organisation handover. There are standards for that. There's a cybersecurity standard for it, so they're thinking ahead on that. So again, it seems that maybe there's not too much of a problem, but the issue is that the standards define the protocols. They don't really decide how you really deploy them. So I would, having looked at it, I think FRMCS is just one component in a much larger system. And it's considering the FRMCS security is not really the problem. The problem is how it's deployed and used in the wider system. That's where the problem is. How's it going to link up with GSMR? How do we move closer to a zero trust paradigm across as much of the infrastructure as possible? That's a long way from where they are now. So that's a long way from sharing a username and password for an area of track or whatever. How do we get there? Well, we'll need things like microsegmentation to work. FRMCS does provide that, so that's one good thing. But the pure cloud model doesn't really work so well on a cyber-physical system. So it's not obvious how you might deploy that. We'll need new standards. Policy enforcement will be needed. You can't have identity management working unless you've got the policy management working with it as well. And zero trust itself is not perfect either. With identity comes the problem. How do you really know the identity that's in there really is the machine or person that should be doing that? So what about research in this area? That's what drives me a little bit. Well, what does zero trust mean for FRMCS deployment? How do we solve things like the identity problem in things like zero trust? How do you make sure the policy can be rolled out? I'm very interested in using machine learning and AI for cybersecurity. AI-based attacks, we haven't heard much about them yet, they're just starting. So at the moment, an attacker might take months to craft an attack. Soon, it's happening now, AI systems do it in milliseconds, essentially. So we're using things like machine learning approaches to do attack detection. We're looking now at starting to use AI approaches to actually tackle against the AI attack systems. So at the same time that an AI attack system is trying to work out an attack, the machine learning is detecting it, then the AI system can kick in and start doing the issues such as, well, I've detected an attack, what does that mean? What should I shut down? What should I allow? Another research problem, how do we get this stuff deployed till 2060, beyond my lifetime, most likely? How do you actually update systems? And I know there's people from Fortis here looking at software life cycles and such things. That's a really interesting area to be looking at. Most encryption algorithms we've got today won't be fit for purpose by the time this system finishes its lifetime. In fact, people are saying that RSA is not fit for purpose now. Those of you know will know why. And so, we need to be able to ensure things like quantum secure algorithms. There are 3 developed by NIST which are likely to be suitable. But at the moment, they're not part of the 5G standards. They will be. But will we have the hardware that can deploy them? If you put hardware in now, will you be able to deploy those more advanced encryption algorithms, in 20, 30 years? Who knows? Well, no, 5 or 6 years maybe. So, we're looking at how would you make modular systems. Well, many of the 5G, 3GPP standards are modular. That's a great thing about it. But how do you make the security systems underneath them modular as well? So a number of areas for interesting research and questions for the DIA. I think I've probably done my 10 minutes. So I'll stop there. And any questions at all about these? So that's a little bit about what we're looking at now. We're going to get white paper out on topics like that. Any questions about the railway working group? Yes.
More of a comment because you were highlighting modularity. One of the nice things that also happened to TLS at some point is that because of its modularity, there are more attacks possible.
Yeah.
So also, two modular is not always good.
Sorry, you said that?
Two modular is also not always good.
Yeah, so too many TLS versions. There's already downgrade attacks.
I'm talking about TLS version. I'm talking about the kinds of algorithms that are theoretically supported and that are supported in deployment.
Yeah.
There's already
there are problems, and one of the big problems with this is that lots of downgrade attacks, by having some sort of overlap in supporting the algorithms, a very common attack that people make is to downgrade the cybersecurity within there. And you're right. And modularity actually gives that attack vector. Yeah. Any other questions? No.
No. Okay.
Probably need to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.